All right. we had a little bit of a hiccup there. I was trying to get it fixed by using Brave. But you guys probably notice sometimes when you have a problem, you're just going in too deep and then you suddenly just realize, let's just try it in a completely different way. So for some reason, the streaming software didn't work. And there's nothing more awkward than having like 300 people waiting for you to fix your stupid setup. But we are here now. So we have a lot to discuss again in this AMA round. Yesterday, we had a very interesting discussion with some politicians from the German parliament. The discussion was in German, but I think it was a pretty exciting start of a potential new series. Like when we were talking yesterday, one thing that I realized is our work at the IOTA Foundation is really to make sure that we build trust, right? Everything that we do is to build trust. And it's for one with the software that we release, right? Making sure that it's safe, that it's secure, that it actually works, right? And that it actually solves problems. But it goes deeper than that, right? We build trust by actually educating, by showing the advantages, by showing the disadvantages, by having these debates of pros and cons. And obviously, we build trust by being fully transparent. That's why we're doing this AMA series. That's why we are trying to communicate more and not less. And that's why we're trying to really make all of you, the entire community, really feel part of what we are building together. And so I think what we are thinking about now is to really do more of these video series and also do a lot more public communication and education, right? Because our work at the IOTA Foundation is to build trust. And we do that by really making sure that everybody understands where we're heading and the problems that we intend to solve. Like a good example is what happened with artificial intelligence, right? Artificial intelligence was initially super hyped, automation, you're gonna save 20% of your costs. But then you look at the other side of the discussion and people actually get feared for their jobs, right? And that means that with AI, we fundamentally didn't build enough trust for people to actually believe in it. And that's also why, for example, Germany and why other countries are actually so far behind some of these digital technologies. And that's why I think that we at the foundation have a quite a unique opportunity to build trust here. And we'll hold more of these discussions with politicians, with thought leaders, with other business leaders. And I think it's also important to have sort of the other side, right? Those that do not believe in IOTA, those that do not believe in blockchain and cryptocurrencies, to give them the opportunity to raise their voice as well, right? Because only through these open debates, we can actually make sure that everybody is being heard and that all of the criticism and potential criticism is actually going to be discussed. And so we are really going to do more of that, and also obviously do it in different languages. And I think there like that will be a big role that we at the foundation will play coming up in terms of education. So without further ado, let me share my screen. Today we have quite a lot of questions actually. As all of you know, last week we released IOTA Smart Contracts, the alpha version of it. We've already seen some community members building applications with it. So that's very exciting. In this AMA, I hope that I didn't see the questions yet, just so you know, but I hope that we also have more questions about smart contracts so that I can explain that in more details. So let me actually start by scrolling down. Can you all see my screen properly? Yeah, I think it looks fine. What is the current status of Hubert in the selection of the green vaccination pass in Germany and in the EU? By the way, first of all, why green vaccination pass? What's green about it? Basically, what we learned 2 days ago is that UBERT, together with IBM and some other parties, won the German vaccination passport. That means that they are now officially developing, or let's say they're officially ramping up their solution. Already, I think 2 months ago, somewhere in south of Germany, in Bavaria, they already issued the first digital health passport, vaccination passport, built on DLTs, like blockchains, including IOTA. Right, so it's very exciting, and congratulations to them for winning this. Maybe something beforehand, right? As a politician, you always tend to make the decision to go with the established corporations, with the established and the status quo. And so I think Germany is really taking a unique route here by also embracing blockchain and distributed ledgers. So that's very exciting that they're going with UBERT. UBERT obviously couldn't win this alone because they're like a small tech company, I think with like 30, 40 employees, but they're really domain experts in what they do. And obviously they've really built up the credibility in the ecosystem by having this first vaccination passport in south of Germany, and by also working together with the testing centers at the airports where they're storing the test results on DLTs. So it's very exciting that they've won the German vaccination passport here in like 2 days ago, basically. And I think the likelihood is quite high that this will probably also be the solution for the European Union. At least there's a chance for it. I can't make any comments yet on IOTA's involvement. I leave that up to UBERT to publish their results. Obviously, IOTA is perfect for such use case because you can store data on IOTA without paying fees. And with Chrysalis, we are really moving towards production readiness. So building this on top of IOTA makes a ton of sense. And we at the IOTA Foundation, for our part, we are continuing with digital identity. All right, so we've onboarded some new team members there as well, and we are making quite some progress in the US as well to get it adopted there. So I think over the next week or two, we're going to see more of that also that we can share publicly. But to concretely answer your question, first of all, congrats to UBERT for winning it. And I think we'll hear more from them soon. And in terms of which DLTs they're utilizing, I think it's 4 or 5 distributed ledgers. Mostly it's permissioned ledgers. And I think previously when they've used IOTA was the only public ledger that they've utilized. I think it may be even Ethereum Classic, but I don't remember that. But yeah, so we'll know more about that very soon, if and how IOTA plays a role in the German vaccination passport. So overall, it's very exciting, and we are very close with UBERT. We're still in close discussions with them. And interesting enough, when you saw the Spiegel article, there was also a Zebra scanner. So that's also funny because we are working very closely with Zebra on the vaccination solution. So just wait for more news or for more official confirmation to come out, maybe end of this week, but I think more likely it will be early next week. And then we'll see which role IOTA is going to play. What are your views on the PayPal acquisition of Curve? What effect do you envision it having on IOTA? Well, first of all, it's very great that PayPal actually acquired Curve because it just shows the commitment of PayPal to really go even further on their crypto route. I remember from some discussions, basically, PayPal, I think they've started trialing crypto. Like the way that their quest started is that they basically issued a questionnaire asking all of their users, like, would you actually be interested in acquiring Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies? And they were just so overwhelmed with the interest that they really started to accelerate the integration. At Q3, Q4 last year, they officially did the integration with Paxos, which is like a gateway for fiat to crypto. And they also work closely with Genesis Trading to basically fulfill all the orders. And PayPal has been acquiring most of the newly mined Bitcoin, right? So what that means is that every 10 minutes, I think 12.5 Bitcoins get issued in the block rewards, right? And that means that this also introduces selling pressure on Bitcoin, because miners need to cover their cost, which more often than not, back then, because the prices were quite low, was quite a large portion of the newly mined Bitcoin. But the buying pressure just from PayPal, right? One company with tens of millions of users was high enough to really acquire all of the new mined Bitcoins. That just really shows the impact that PayPal is having on the space. And PayPal, because they really see this as a new business model, right? Offering custody for crypto and making it easy to buy and sell them, is now really getting even deeper into this space by acquiring Curve and by having a new custody partner, which makes it easy for them to also onboard other cryptocurrencies, right? Because so far they only have Bitcoin, Ether, and Litecoin, I think, right? And the goal for them is definitely to offer more of those cryptocurrencies. And we work closely with Curve. They're working on the integration right now with Chrysalis in mind. And I really hope that we'll be able to convince PayPal as well to list IOTA. I'm very certain that as time passes, that PayPal has no reason to object listing IOTA. But obviously, I can't give any confirmations or pre-announcements right now. But overall, I think it's very, very exciting for the entire space that PayPal acquired Curve for $200 million, I think. That just shows how serious this space has gotten. And it's very exciting for the entire crypto space, because Curve is very experienced, and they're really going to open up the floodgates, so to say, so that PayPal can list IOTA and other crypto assets. So we'll wait and see, and it remains exciting, right? Since every crypto fiat and crypto value transaction is a taxable event under most government tax guidelines, will this hinder the progress of the IOTA ecosystem and our future machine economy? Do you see these rules changing, and is the general crypto space, as the general crypto space matures? Very good question. We always, since the inception of IOTA, we always argued that we need to have very clear guidelines and very clear regulations. Because when you speak with a large company, first of all, they get very excited about DLT. They get very excited about the potential to have a cryptocurrency, right, be an enabler for new use cases. But then once you start going deeper into really this integration into their existing systems, all of these questions arise, right? Around taxes, around accounting, around custody, around the legality and all of that, right? It's really a bunch of questions that need to be answered. And only the regulators can answer them by offering these clear guidelines. What's very exciting is that in the European Union, we now have, I think over the next 2 or 3 years, there will be a new directive coming, which is called MiCA. And that will really help in offering clear guidelines on taxation, but also on the regulation of crypto assets. So I think that will really be the next wave of adoption for crypto. As we have PayPal here as a good example, I'm absolutely certain that all of the large banks in Europe are right now really seriously assessing on how they can enter the crypto space, and also how they can actually start out with offering custody for their clients, for high net worth clients to begin with, but also how they can really roll this out to all of their customers, all of their clients. And what they need for that is clear guidelines, right? And yes, right now there's some like progress being hindered because these guidelines aren't there, but we're really getting there. And I think all of the big companies that we're working with right now that are touching the token, they're fine with that right now, because we're really also still in this sort of exploration phase where the technology needs to mature, but also where their use cases need to mature. right? And I think it's all sort of coming together that over the next 2 or 3 years, with the clear guidelines, with the tech being ready, that will really be much easier to integrate crypto into their systems. And I think many of these rules here are also just really like oftentimes you can solve these problems through software, right? Where you really just do an automated, have an automated system that takes care of all your micropayments. So it's just about having the entire financial infrastructure around IOTA and around crypto mature a lot more. So I think we're getting there, and I don't think it's really hindering the progress right now. I think the major thing that's hindering progress right now is really just volatility of crypto assets. Yeah. How confident are you that Chrysalis will be implemented by midnight on 31st December 21? Well, I'm not sure if it's going to be exactly at midnight. What I can tell you is that we're making some really good progress with GoShimmer, right? We should have Mana implemented soon with the objective of releasing Nectar, which is sort of this very first phase or first implementation where all of the different Chrysalis components are implemented. And we're going to have that in April, is the current target. And then we can really start doing all of this exciting testing together with all of you. Then we really already have this version of Chrysalis ready, right? Because all of the components are implemented, and now we really need to do a lot of testing. So if you can do the roadmap in your head, if we have it in April, the objective is really that if we can accelerate the testing, that we will be able to do it by the end of the year, right? That's still the internal target, that we do Chrysalis by Q4. And if there's any changes to that, we'll obviously notify you guys. But I think more like what we should really have ahead of us is that beginning of April, we will be able to do some much more serious testing with Chrysalis or like with this GoShimmer network, and also really make sure that as we accelerate the testing around Chrysalis, that we'll be able to get it onto the mainnet by Q4. So that's still the objective, and I think we're on good track with that, because also after Chrysalis is like on the mainnet, everybody will start focusing on Chrysalis, right? So we're also thinking about how we can be integrated into the Firefly wallet, and also B and Hornet will focus exclusively, then largely, but they will focus on implementing Chrysalis in Rust and in Go. I think it's looking really good, and I can highly encourage all of you to follow the GoShimmer repository on GitHub, because then you will really know what's exactly happening right now. And Angelo, Hans, and the entire team, they're really doing an absolutely amazing job there. So I also showed him some love on Discord. But yeah, 0.4 is going out next week, I think. And after that, we should be pretty well positioned to do Nectar in April. So that is already a major milestone. Hey Dom, thanks for these informative AMA videos. As the face of the IOTA Foundation, how do you generally divide your time, say for a typical week? Do you do any program at all these days? I'm guessing not very much. Huh? Do you miss it? Also, I was wondering how the HR works at the IOTA Foundation. In particular, the community always gets informed of new hires, but rarely of departures. Can you elaborate on the turnover rate and some of the underlying reasons? Thanks again. Great question. So that's more on the operations side. I think, as all of you can guess, building up an organization like IOTA requires a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And we went through a lot of these typical evolutionary cycles. I think usually the way that it goes is you start out as a project, people come together, right? Everybody says, yeah, fuck it, let's do it. This is amazing. And you just start building, right? You don't really have a clear roadmap ahead of you, and you don't really know exactly where you're heading. And sort of the 2017, 2018 phase was really where we had rapid growth, where suddenly we grew to 30, 50 people. but there was no structure, right? There was no clear guidance, there was no clear strategy. And so we had to really grow and learn by doing, because we didn't have any mentors, we didn't have anybody tell us, or we didn't have anybody that's been there and has clearly shown us how to do it. So we kind of had to do it all ourselves. So 2018, 2019 was sort of the year where we built up structure. And last year is really where we started, like 2019, 2020 was the year where the years where we really had the time to sit down and think about strategy, right? Because before that, you were just always too immersed by day-to-day operations, by firefighting, by somebody attacking the network, right? By some drama in the community and stuff like that. So you were just too immersed by all of those problems, so that you didn't have time to think about the bigger things and where we're heading. And so I'm really happy that since like really last year, we've been able to focus more on the bigger things, on the bigger strategy. And you can see it paying off with Chrysalis. And the team today, I think we're 135, 140 people, or at least we will be over the next few weeks. And we really have a very experienced executive team on board who are helping us to focus on each department, to execute so that we can, or like we on the board, can really focus on the high level strategy and talking with bigger partners, talking with big funds, and so on, right? So focus on the bigger things. If I were to summarize my week, first of all, it's a lot of calls, right? Because you do have to do day-to-day, which is to keep updated with the progress of what's happening, make high-level decisions, and also align with the team. My role at the foundation is to help define the high-level objectives, right? Where do we want to go, and also somewhat define how we're getting there. And other than that, I'm really focused on also like what do the next quarters look like. Because one thing that's really crazy about the crypto space is that because everything is so rapidly evolving, you don't really make a plan for the next year. You just really try and focus on like what do the next 1 to 2 quarters look like. And other than that, you have to be ready to improvise, right? You really have to be nimble and very agile in this space, because else you're missing out. And so I think we at the Foundation do a really good job in that as well, where we have some high level guidance of where we want to head. But at the core of it, we're really still able to improvise and be agile, even though we are largely quite a big organization, right? So yeah, right cause and alignment and defining objectives, and also really thinking about those other projects which are going to come out over the next few weeks. Like those have really been my core focus over the last weeks and months, to think about how we can really make IOTA as an ecosystem even bigger, and also how to bring more key partners on board and do this sort of bridge building exercise where we educate some important people in the space that IOTA 2021 is very, very different from IOTA in 2017. And so, yeah, no, I don't do any programming at all. I think I'm a bad programmer anyways. So I just did that back in the early days out of necessity. And we have much, much better people doing that. So I kind of miss it, yeah. But at the same time, there's no time for that right now, sadly. About HR. So yeah, the HR team at IOTA is really amazing. They do a really amazing job there. To name them, Lisa, Virginie, and Jan, and also Mariana, and Marina. And we are doing, like, I think the operations team of any organization is really also the backbone of it. And if the operations team works well, everybody else in the organization can really focus on what they do best, right? So they're really sort of the, like I said, they're the backbone that enable the organization to be productive. And the focus of HR. One complexity that I want to mention here is, and this is pretty interesting because we are such a unique organization, is we are in, I think, nearly 30 countries at this point, right? 30 countries where we are today. So it's hugely complex, but it's also hugely exciting because it's not just about, hey, we only have a talent pool in Germany, right? We have a talent pool globally. and we want to empower people to work from wherever they want to work from, right? It's about individual freedom, and it's about getting shit done, and that's what's fundamentally important in the foundation. So from the HR and operations perspective, it is quite complex in that regard, but we are able to handle it, and we have a lot of experience with doing these sort of administrative tasks at this point. The main reason why we only announce hires is because we want to show the community on in which direction we're going and who we're getting on board. I don't think it's fair to the people also mentioning why people leave, right? Because oftentimes it's personal reasons or stuff like that. I think the turnover rate in the IOTA Foundation is one of the lowest in the industry, because everybody that joins the foundation really joins with a clear like shared mission and shared passion for what we're doing. And so maybe we can actually do some statistics on this, but I'm very certain that IOTA is one of the lowest turnover, like that we have one of the lowest turnover rates in this entire industry. And it also makes me quite proud, because it just shows that we really have a team that cares and that really believes. And we don't want to hire mercenaries. We don't want to have people that earn insane salaries like Silicon Valley type companies or even New York, right? It's really about being here for the mission and achieving this mission together with us. And because we have such a unique work environment, it fits quite perfectly for most people. Like I couldn't work anywhere else other than IOTA, right? Because it is about this individual freedom, but it's also about being able to contribute, making it possible for everybody to contribute towards the success of the project. And also, some of the best people in the foundation are from the community. Like I would say I'm a community member, right? First and foremost. And so they all really believe in it, and they've been part of the community for years. And so they've been through the hardship, and right now is really the most exciting time in IOTA, right? So it's really all coming together. But if there's some kind of need for transparency, we can provide that. But I think overall, the way that we do it right now, where we announce the hires so that everybody kind of knows on what our focus is quite good. And oftentimes we only announce hires 2 or 3 months afterwards, by the way, when they've been hired. And other than that, just look on the IOTA website, right? You can see everything transparently there on who's part of the foundation, who's not. Volkswagen pilots blockchain to integrate electric vehicles with power grids. Energy Web plans to use blockchain technology to help ensure an efficient future for Volkswagen electric vehicles. Any idea why Volkswagen does not work with IOTA in this regard? The way that I understand this is Energy Web Foundation is more like a consortium, right? It is a consortium of some of the largest utility companies out there. It is a permissioned blockchain, right? With I think they're using proof of authority. And I think what Volkswagen is doing here is they're doing what everybody else does, which is to do pilots. And pilots does not mean exclusivity, right? Pilots basically means like there's some exciting piece of tech, there's some exciting partners, and we want to test this out in the real world to see if it works and if it doesn't work. So I think this is nothing more than that. And Energy Web is really something that has I think large corporate backing as well. And our focus at IOTA right now, or our core strategy, is really that we get Chrysalis through, and we launch the Nectar corticide testnet, and then we really want to do a much more aggressive push in the market and also revive some of those old contacts of ours. So we have a pretty exciting strategy in terms of the adoption. You can see it paying off, right? You can see it with what we're doing with identity. And you will also definitely see it with smart contracts. So I think all of these companies will also come closer to us. And as we start to build bridges, I think it will also be much easier to have IOTA be part of some of these pilots, right? Because I don't think any of these very complex use cases, like for example, doing peer-to-peer energy trading. Like, I don't think that any of those use cases will be developed in like as real products over the next 4 to 5 years, because the major complexity there is really around the regulations, and also around finding the right integration, security, and all of that. So it's still all very early stage in that regard. And we at IOTA, we can really position ourselves. And especially once we move forward with sharding and all of that, it will be very, very, very interesting to figure out how we can work together with those companies then. After stress test, can we have any dates for Chrysalis? So Chrysalis right now is looking pretty good. We started doing the Firefly sort of alpha, like more bigger alpha testing, not just internal, but with some community members last Friday now, I think, right? Or like, no, early this week. We started doing it, and that's going pretty good. And we are also pretty much done with the audits at this point. The major thing that we still need to progress on is the exchange integration. Right now, there is one exchange that is going to be pretty much done relatively soon. And with the other 2 large exchanges, we're still closely coordinating. For us, it's very important that we launch Chrysalis with at least 3 exchanges. Because at the end of the day, if we don't do that, trading will be, I think trading will be able to resume, but the withdrawals and deposits will not be able to be done. But I think we should know more about that over the coming days, right? What I can definitely say is that with the public release of Firefly, that it will be a lot more exciting also for the broader community to start participating in Chrysalis, because right now we have sort of like the hardcore IOTA fans testing out Chrysalis, where they're able to set up their nodes, where they really sort of know what they're doing when it comes to IOTA. And as we start to broaden this and allow others to join, you will also be able to really feel what Chrysalis looks like, and how amazing it is to have reusable addresses and no longer have the pain of worrying about address reuse and simple stuff like that. At the stress test, I actually have to ask the people. I think Either was working on the stress test, but maybe they're going to do it again this weekend. So far from the internal stress test, it looks really, really good. And we were definitely able to cross the numbers from previous stress tests. But I think we should do another public stress test, absolutely, over the next week or 2, so that we can also show some new benchmarks. But when it comes to the definite date for Chrysalis, the goal is still end of the month, right? I hope that we'll be able to make it with the exchanges, but we're closely coordinating with them. And other than that, the software itself will be ready, but we'll have to wait and see on what's going to happen. And we'll obviously keep you guys posted. That's why we're doing the AMAs and stuff like that. But other than that, we should be pretty good in regards to Chrysalis. A smart contract in IOTA must live in a sidechain where a dedicated group of nodes are assigned with the task of executing the contract. A smart contract developer must create a sidechain, define the number of validators and the fees. This seems like a lot of work compared with Ethereum, where the process is much more straightforward. Also, from the end user perspective, trust does not come for granted. One must trust the sidechain before trusting the contract. Does IF envision some kind of ecosystem developing around sidechains? Would it be possible to develop some governance model so that the sidechain can be, for example, controlled by the community and allow for equal participation to whoever wishes to deploy a contract or build a node? A very good question. So one thing that I want to emphasize is this is a feature and not a bug, right? Like with Ethereum, the simplicity of launching a smart contract comes at a significant cost, because in Ethereum, you can launch a smart contract, you can easily deploy it, but it's going to cost you hundreds of dollars at the peaks of the fee market, and you have significant scalability issues, right? Now, what we are focused on, one of the major design principles of IOTA smart contracts was to have this flexibility for the developer, because what I can definitely tell you is if you are a smart contract developer and you have a decentralized application, right? And this dApp actually is your life in regards to, it's your startup, you're trying to make money off of it, you have a team that survives off of it, you want to make sure that your dApp actually runs. And as such, you're willing to invest the time it takes to really set up the right environment for your dApp so that you can focus on acquiring customers and not worry about the fee market, worry about how to optimize them, and worry about scalability issues, right? That's why AWS, like if you've ever looked into Amazon Web Services, it's hugely complex, right? The interface, but it gives this flexibility and this freedom to developers and obviously to operations people to really define their environment. And the same is true with IOTA Smart Contracts, where we want to give developers this opportunity to define their environment that is required for their application, and that gives them the ultimate success, which is to acquire as many customers and users as possible. Right? Now, because this is such a flexible environment, we can allow permissioned smart contracts to launch on top. So if you think about a consortium of companies coming together, like in this example with Energy Web, they could do that on top of IOTA, right? They can build a consortium, only they can see the transactions, nobody else can see the transactions, and it's secured by the IOTA ledger, the public IOTA ledger, right? So that's the one spectrum. The other spectrum, which is even more exciting, is an open marketplace, right? So think about a permissionless network where validators and where smart contract developers are able to meet, right? And that marketplace could be completely decentralized. It could really be secure. It could ensure certain security requirements so that the smart contract that you deploy has the same sort of ease of deployment, ease of use as in Ethereum, but it has a the similar security requirements as in Ethereum, right? And that's what makes it so exciting, because we can really develop a new smart contract environment where smart contracts are being secured by an open validator marketplace, and where they're also being incentivized by paying them fees, by paying them transaction fees, or through other mechanisms, right? And that's really how we are continuing with IOTA Smart Contracts, because it is going to evolve into sort of its own protocol, its own network eventually, where we're going to see these different smart contracts be openly deployed similarly to Ethereum, and the IOTA ledger is being leveraged for the security, right? To anchor every state of every smart contract or virtual machine in that regard. And where it's also being utilized to pay for the transaction fees, to pay for the incentives, where it's also being utilized for this interoperability between smart contracts. So to answer your question, absolutely, right? We are focused on offering a flexible environment where you can define your sort of committee or your validators, or where we're going to see an open marketplace establish itself to have these validators secure your smart contracts. So it's all very exciting, and if you read between the lines, you will see how this is really going to evolve. So it's very, very interesting. Volatility. Fast forward 10 years, my car pays the garage for parking. I pay a certain amount of IOTA, which represent a certain value in fiat. 3 days later, my IOTA have a different value. I think it's naive to believe any digital currency will replace fiat in any of our lifetimes. The volatility of cryptocurrencies compared to fiat is unpredictable. So how do you view the issue in regard to real-life usability, where customers will want to rely on a certain range of stability? Good question. This is what we've been saying all along. How do we go from speculative asset towards cryptocurrency, right? Because every cryptocurrency today is not really a currency. You can pay for it. You can utilize it in certain use cases, especially in the crypto realm. But in the real world, you want to have stability. You don't want to be exposed towards this uncertainty. And all you fundamentally care about is to utilize the best medium of exchange, right? And if crypto is not the best medium of exchange, it's not going to get adopted. People will continue to utilize their credit cards to pay for a Starbucks coffee simply because it's so fast. And they don't care about paying 2 or 3% in fees, right? So that's why crypto really needs to solve this UX problem, right? The user experience problem. Only if we solve that, we're going to get the next million users next billion users onto our platforms. And we've really been thinking about this problem for the longest time as well, right? One thing that I want to say beforehand is that with the machine economy, we sort of have a unique opportunity as well, because a lot of the user experience problems can sort of be hidden, because at the end of the day, we are focused on machine to machine, right? So there it's much easier to have some sort of hedging mechanisms where the buyer and the seller side are being protected for a certain time frame, and we can already do that with smart contracts once they're live, and with ICP. But fundamentally, all of that introduces new friction, because now you're potentially relying on a central service provider, right? Central financial institution to enable this hedging mechanism. You can do it in decentralized ways as well. But the big question is really, how do you enable this also for humans, and how do you do digital currencies for humans, right? So that we can pay for our coffee, pay for our pizza, and whatever. And if you look at how IOTA is evolving with Mana, is really becoming digital infrastructure. We are becoming like the spectrum, where you hold your IOTA tokens in order to enable your use case. Right? That is why IOTA is becoming the store of value, right? And we're going to write a lot more about how IOTA is evolving into the store of value that enables this medium of exchange. Right, so you can really think about IOTA as being these payment rails, where also stablecoins and where other currencies and other assets can sit on top and can be utilized to enable these use cases. That's exactly why we've actually released the digital assets framework, because so far we've only had IOTA as a native asset. But because we are so confident, and because we are so determined that this is the future of IOTA, right? Where it becomes this technological backbone for the machine economy, where it really is going to be adopted, where the IOTA token is really going to be adopted as these payment rails. We also started to realize we really need to accelerate digital assets, because that is such a fundamentally important use case that is being enabled by IOTA. So all of these questions are going to be answered over the next few months, and also I think years. Because creating a new ecosystem and sort of like a new economy with machines is no easy feat, and there are assumptions that will be disproven along the way. Like that's part of innovation. But I'm very certain that with IOTA, with Mana, with Chrysalis, and with digital assets, we are on the right path here to really build digital assets that are being utilized by different use cases, and that are going to see the IOTA token and the IOTA protocol at the open network be adopted by large companies. Best example is that infrastructure project in Germany that is funded by the German government, and that is now moving forward. There you can clearly see why IOTA is needed, right? IOTA is the digital infrastructure layer for the physical infrastructure. It improves it. It actually enables the physical infrastructure to work autonomously. And so it's really going down in a very, very exciting path. And I think with that, we are able to solve the volatility problem as well. So it's really about having a sort of new payment rails and with IOTA, and utilizing the IOTA token itself to enable the network itself to function with Mana. And just so you know, with the Nectar release, which is scheduled for April, we will obviously also explain a lot more on how Mana works and what it really means for the end user. So all of you will also better understand it, how it's working. I'll answer this question as well. I have asked this question a handful of times over the years. Dom, another angle that might be easier to answer. How does the IF answer the question when it is asked by organizations interested in implementing value transactions? Good question. I gave a presentation, I think a few years ago, where I clearly explained why you cannot do IoT payments with existing financial infrastructure. You cannot have an IoT device do an API call to a bank or to a financial institution to transfer money from its bank account to another machine's bank account, right? That is simply not possible, right? The existing infrastructure cannot enable machine-to-machine payments. And as such, we need to think differently. And that's exactly why IOTA exists, because IOTA is designed for the Internet of Things, and it's designed to enable machine-to-machine payments where a machine doesn't need to interact with a central service provider, but where we really have machines making up this entire distributed network, securing the transactions with each other and transacting with each other based on this protocol. And that's exactly what large companies also understand. And that's why many large companies are so interested in distributed ledgers, because they actually enable micropayments and because IOTA actually enables machine-to-machine payments. And that's why they're very excited about IOTA, and that's why they're working with us, right? And the big question here is really to answer the question around how to solve this volatility problem. And I think I already went into this with the previous question. The way that big companies are seeing IOTA now as well, and we've seen this with a few companies that recently purchased IOTA actually, or that we know of actually, they really see it, first of all, as a new asset class, similarly to the spectrum, which is digital infrastructure. You can own a piece of the spectrum. You can buy access to the frequency. It's going to cost you a lot of money, but you can buy access to it. And the main reason why you want to have part of the spectrum is A, you speculate on its future utility, and B, you actually want to utilize or benefit from its utility. And the same is true with IOTA, right? We have the IOTA token, which is utilized to enable the major use case in IOTA, which is transactional settlement, right? With Mana, you need to hold IOTA tokens in order to do fee-less transactions. And as such, first of all, we enable the investment case where IOTA is really an asset that hopefully with increased adoption goes up in value. So first of all, you can bet on that future. And the second one, which is the major benefit, is it enables your use case. And that's what more and more companies are starting to understand. And as we release Mana, and as we release the Nectar release of Go Shimmer, we'll definitely also start to shape up the narrative around this a lot more. And I think if you really dive deeper into this, it's such an exciting value proposition for any type of infrastructure investor, for any type of investor in general, and also for any type of company that wants to be part of this machine economy. Because what happens if you acquire either tokens, right? They go down in value because you pay transaction fees. And you're going to end the more utility you want to enable, the higher the fees will be, and the less either tokens you're going to have. Same is true with Bitcoin and with other assets. Only with IOTA, you really have feeless transactions, and you are able to acquire part of this spectrum. And so it's a very exciting value proposition for many funds and also companies that we speak with. Since IOTA was created for the IoT, how can it compare to the existing IoT communications protocols like MQTT, LoRa, etc.? Should and can it be used in the place of these, or should it only be kept for microtransactions between IoT devices only? These protocols are more private since they don't get uploaded to a network where everyone can see them and or less power resource hungry. One thing, it's almost kind of difficult to clearly define what IOTA as a protocol is, because if you say IOTA is a trust protocol, you're like, okay, what does it actually mean, right? Because trust can mean so many things. It can mean data, it can mean transactions, it can mean identity. And I would classify IOTA not really as a communications protocol, because IOTA is not meant to enable one machine to transfer data to another machine. There are much better protocols out there that actually enable that. And distributed ledgers like IOTA, while they are really beautiful and amazing for certain use cases, they can be really cumbersome and clunky for other use cases. You're not gonna do instantaneous data transfers with IOTA. It's not meant to do big data streaming or stuff like that. IOTA is really truly meant for data integrity and data security use cases, where you have an IoT device that needs to share data with another IoT device, potentially monetize it, right? But where it's about trust. You want to be able to verify the data that you receive from the IoT device is authentic, has not been altered with, is immutable. And that's exactly why you want to use a distributed ledger. And I think IOTA makes a lot of sense for this one-to-many use cases, right? Where there's one IoT device that wants to share its data with many other IoT devices. That's why IOTA makes so much sense in supply chain tracking, where we have, for example, a package, and on the package we have a sensor. And this sensor might record the current temperature in the refrigerated container, or it records the current GPS coordinates. And this data is perfectly represented on IOTA, because now other third parties, like the supplier, like the port authority, like customs, like other companies, can receive this data, can verify this data, and can make certain actions based on that data. And the primary data use case that is enabled by IOTA is automation. Any smart contract or any also process that is really sort of mission critical needs to rely on trustworthy data. And that's exactly where IOTA fits in. And I think that protocols like MQTT and LoRa fit perfectly with IOTA, because they sort of augment the use case. And oftentimes you can come up with very interesting architectures of the entire system to really enable the use case itself. For example, I don't think that any IoT device out there is going to integrate IOTA, because first of all, they don't have to. And second of all, they shouldn't, right? Because IOTA is a peer-to-peer network. And so you do have some certain bandwidth requirements, you do have storage requirements, and also computation requirements. That means that the focus of IOTA is really more on the gateway level, or fog computing and stuff like that. So that means that we need to have a way for IoT devices to securely communicate with the gateway. And that's where you can utilize traditional symmetric cryptography or other mechanisms to share the data from the source with the gateway or with the hub, and then store it on the tangle and share it with the outside world. And I think all of that will really start to evolve more over the next few years, or next few months actually, in terms of the integrations with IOTA. Carpincho, if you guys know him from Discord, his company builds amazing integrations with existing IoT devices, and that just really shows you the kind of potential and where we are heading with these integrations of IOTA, where low-level IoT devices can store data on the tangle with streams, and then make this data secure and shareable, and also obviously monetize it. So the use case of IOTA is really data, but is also really microtransactions, as you said. And there's no protocol out there today that enables microtransactions like IOTA does. So in that regard, we're very unique there. And MQTT and LoRa basically improve and enable IOTA to function. There's also a very interesting project in Germany that is actually transmitting IOTA, like IOTA stored data from water meters through LoRa, and that's very exciting how IOTA is being utilized with these communications protocols. Let's maybe do one or two more questions. I have two questions. Will MANA even be necessary after sharding is implemented? The quick question is, the ultimate goal of IOTA is to have a reputation system. Reputation systems are really incredibly complex, especially if you talk about the distributed ledger network, where you don't really know who the parties are, right? So we are slowly evolving into that. And I think Mana will be relevant for the next 3 to 5 years, I would say. Also, even after sharding, because it is this rate control mechanism, or it is part of the rate control mechanism, and it helps to distribute transaction throughput. And even with sharding, there might be shards that have a lot of transaction requirements where Mana is helping to distribute this scarce resource. But IOTA as a protocol and IOTA as a network is ever evolving, right? We always want to make sure that the transactions throughput increases every year. Well, like to really make sure that all the use cases that we envision are being realized by IOTA. Is there work being done on Firefly mobile app? Is there an idea when we could expect something like that? I'm guessing it will be after the desktop wallet and not at the same time. The mobile app is definitely going to come after the Chrysalis release, because right now the primary focus is to do Chrysalis and is to release the desktop wallet so that all of you can start to transition from the legacy network to the new network. So because of that, it's hugely important that we release the desktop wallet first. But with Firefly, we really have a more serious roadmap to figure out how we can integrate digital assets, how we can integrate smart contracts, governance, right? It's really evolving into a very exciting route that we're taking with Firefly, so that it becomes sort of a standalone product and it becomes much more than a wallet. And the mobile app is definitely going to come over the next few months, but we don't have a concrete timeline for that yet. Let me maybe also read this question. I remember a couple of years ago, you said on Discord that the team is working on setting up more revenue streams to make the foundation independent on their token holdings. How close is the foundation to reaching that goal? We're still working on that. I think this year we got several grants again. For those of you that don't know, it's basically public funding where we apply to do a certain project together with partners, together in a consortium, and where the IOTA Foundation is one of their contracting parties, and where we basically get funding from the government to work on these projects. One of these was just mentioned today, where we work on e-commerce supply chains. And I think there, for example, we got like €500,000 for that project. Overall, I would say the current strategy is to figure out which kind of products could be monetized and which kind of products we can sort of incubate or /excubate, right? Because we do have a lot of ideas in the IOTA Foundation, but it's more about which ones should we set up to also create an ecosystem around that. So we're thinking a lot about that right now, and you will definitely hear over the next few weeks in which direction that we're taking with that. But ultimately, the goal of the foundation is to empower the ecosystem. And also with the NFT marketplace, for example, I don't think it's the role of the IOTA Foundation to build such a marketplace, even though it would be a very exciting opportunity. I think what really will give us at the foundation joy is to see the IOTA community to build such a marketplace. And I know several people that have already started building it. And our role at the IOTA Foundation is to really empower them and to empower all of you to start building on IOTA and to build startups in our ecosystem, because we really have to grow and the ecosystem has to be self-sufficient, where it's not just the IOTA Foundation building stuff, but where we really have an entire ecosystem around IOTA. And we're really at that stage where IOTA is not just about the IOTA Foundation anymore, but it's really about the entire IOTA ecosystem. And I think that's really exciting that the community is also realizing these for-profit opportunities and is executing on them. To earn Mana, would one need to run a node, or will holding IOTA be sufficient? Holding IOTA will be sufficient. You can delegate them. It's similarly to staking in that regard. And obviously, if you run your own node, you have more freedom to decide, and you also have a higher requirement in that regard. But our objective with Mana is really to make it as simple as possible to do it. Maybe one last question before I close the stream. Will there be official documentation, tutorials, or less experienced developers who want to work with Chrysalis and smart contracts or only community projects? Oh, absolutely. We really want to increase our developer advocacy so that all of you can really start to build together with us. So we'll definitely start to do more YouTube tutorials. We started doing that with the Rust coding sessions of the B team, and I think those are super helpful for people that want to learn Rust and get started with it. But with smart contracts, our objective with them is really to make them as simple and as plug and play as possible, so that anybody can realize a smart contract and build their own hello world example and get introduced to IOTA, but also get introduced to computer science and the internet as a sort of ecosystem to build your own company and startup much more closely. So we also have those developer courses that we do together with the IoT One Academy. And education, learning, and this sort of academy is definitely something that we are going to scale up over the next few months, especially with smart contracts, because there will be much more, the use cases that are enabled by IOTA are even broader. And so I think that will be very exciting. And our role at the foundation is to help the entire ecosystem to be productive and to start building on top of IOTA. So I think we had some good questions. I sadly can't go through all of them because I do have to do some work still. I think this week we are definitely moving forward with Firefly. Maybe we can also start doing some show you some screencasts of what it looks like, what it feels like to do reusable addresses. And other than that, I can highly encourage all of you to join our Discord if you're not there yet. You can follow all of the developments there. You can follow the Smart Contracts channel. You can follow streams. You can follow the B channel, Hornet, and obviously you can follow the Chrysalis channel. And if you want to be part of the testing, I definitely think we should try and do a stress test this week. I'll try and coordinate that with our team to see what the benchmarks will be. And so we also get some more metrics to see how much better really Chrysalis is, because there's some soft factors like reusable addresses, like no longer having ternary but binary, and also by utilizing different cryptography. So that's all very exciting, but we also need to put some metrics behind that. And so I think we can do that over the next week or two and really put some numbers behind IOTA. Without further ado, I hope that all of you have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. Make sure to ping us on Discord if you have any questions. Next time, I'll make sure that we're not going to have any delay because of this streaming software. I'll be a better streamer. And without any more comments, I hope you have a good Wednesday and see you soon. Bye-bye.